Other news, a medical certificate may not be enough to convince your employer of illness. Companies can request further information from your doctor if the sick note is, for example, for a Monday, like today, or a Friday, or a day after a public holiday, just in case you wanted to extend your time out. The medical practitioner may be required to write an affidavit or even be called in for questioning. Well, to discuss this further, we're joined in the studio by attorney Natasha Moni. Natasha, good morning. Thank you very much for coming through.
Pleasure, Dan.
And talking to us. Now, okay, generally, people think it's easy to get you get a sick note, and if you are sick, it's genuine. And I think some companies say first day, it's 1 day is okay, but after 3 days, you need to produce evidence that you are really ill. And that can only be provided by a doctor.
Yes.
So under normal circumstances, that should be okay. But I think companies are beginning to think, what if this person tends to take particular days of the week? Is that where the problem is?
The problem is in terms of an abuse of sick leave. Now, sick leave, you get an entitlement of 30 days in every 3-year cycle. It's a lot of days to enable you to resolve whatever you have and get better. And sometimes employees abuse that. And what is happening is that if you abuse it more than a couple of days in an 8-week cycle, then the company is entitled to say, look, you need to explain this sick leave. What is happening is that employees are getting medical certificates that say medical condition. And in one of the cases that went to the Labour Court, it said dermatological condition. And the problem with that is that this particular employee was off for a month and with a dermatological condition. And he was a driver. So the company was asking, well, hang on a minute, what has this got to do with your, what has driving, why is your driving stopped? Because you have a skin condition. And he wasn't able to explain it. And
not even to say it was itchy, he has to scratch himself all the time.
Well, his problem is that he didn't tell the employer right up front. He wasn't honest with the employer right up front.
So there was no transparency in the whole thing, there was no full disclosure in terms of that condition. So the employer was entitled to ask the questions.
In fact, the employer was entitled to ask the question because he submitted a medical certificate only after he was purportedly better. And that medical certificate was dated that particular date of him being better and not him being sick.
So now if there's abuse and the company suspects there's abuse, they can summon your doctor to come and answer questions or write an affidavit where that's like a legal thing now to say this Dan suffers from this and this and this, which has disabled him from working during this period.
So Dan, the issue is, and specifically for the courts, that a medical certificate doesn't talk for itself. It doesn't explain things, especially when it's just a medical condition. And so the doctor has to explain why.
What about matters of confidentiality? They say patient and doctor confidentiality matters. Is that why an affidavit will be required to protect that?
Absolutely. Look, you have to. It's our fundamental right to keep our privacy and to have our privacy and our dignity. All right. But when you are suffering from an occupational disease, for instance, the air conditioning system is continuously making you ill, it is perhaps better for you to disclose that in order for the employer to make your workplace safe. That is your fundamental right too.
Yeah, so basically the message is do not abuse sick leave.
Don't abuse sick leave.
Because you really need it, because it's your right to have it. You've got 30 days over 3 years, need it for when you're sick, because if the company thinks you're abusing, you might be in trouble.
You will be in trouble because the company can first place you on a disciplinary inquiry for submitting fraudulent medical certificates, and they won't pay you.
Okay. Now, before you go, we ask you to come and talk about the sick leave thing. You've clarified, but okay. Natasha, before you go, there's a new leave thing that's been gazetted. You were telling us just before we went on air, and this is about parental leave in terms of after a birth of a child.
Yes.
Just tell me, what is this?
Okay, that is for a father or for the person who is not taking maternity leave, and it is 10 days. Now, the Act, it's been gazetted. The Act says you must go and claim it from the Labour Department, but I don't believe that they have the systems up and ready yet. So what I've been hearing is that you claim it first from your employer, and then you need to claim back that money, the 10 days leave, from the department. I can see problems, I can see issues.
Yeah, because I'm just wondering, which normally when you apply for leave, you apply for leave,
yes,
and then it's given. So are companies now expected to include, as part of their gambit of the different categories of leave,
it's the law.
Parental leave?
It's the
so
law.
It's the law now.
It's the law, and they have to apply it. And the parameters around that is, Dan, that you need to apply a month before the birth of the child, and that child needs to be registered in your name. How many fathers do we have in South Africa who are not registered on our birth certificate? So I foresee an enormous amount of problems.
So you need to know, you need to tell your employer, this is the date that my child is expected to be born. And we know that can go one way or the other, because, I mean, the child will be born when they're born.
Absolutely.
Unless you're doing an intervention, like a Caesar intervention,
yes,
and
yes.
you know exactly the
What
date.
day?
It's difficult sometimes to know the exact date
Absolutely.
of the birth child. But you need to apply more or less a month before.
Yes.
And it's a 10-day leave.
It's 10
and
days.
the companies must now implement that going forward.
They must
It's been
implement
gazetted.
It has been gazetted.
But in our society, to say there's challenges.
There are challenges. There are challenges because there are many fathers who don't want to be fathers of the children and are not registered. And I see abuse of this as well. For those people who merely are named fathers in order to get the 10 days worth of leave. So
it's going to be very interesting. I think we'd like to unpack this a little bit more from different angles and watch the space. But thank you very much, Natasha Moni.
My pleasure.
You came in to talk about the possible abuse of sick leave and what you could be in trouble for, and now you're sharing with us the recently gazetted parental leave, which is an important one as well. But it needs a discussion as well. It deserves a full discussion from different angles. HR departments now, I'm sure they're going to be tearing their hair out and stuff.
They've got work to do.
They've got work to do. Thank you very much. Natasha Moni talking to us there about sick leave, and just as we're ending that interview, advising us that the new parental leave of 10 days has now been gazetted. That's a new category of leave that's come into South Africa's workplace. So familiarize yourself with it if you're an employer or an employee. And like any other leave, do not abuse it.